So we're gonna get started. So I'm gonna get started. It's right on time, 11 o'clock. This is the panel on meat. We are happy to have our experts here to talk to us about local meat processing and all the work that is being done currently, and we hope in the future to help farmers access meat processing for their animals. We have Katie Adkins, who is running Plymouth Meats, and that's in Terryville. And then we have two representatives from Virtual Ag Ventures, who is a major sponsor of the conference. We're happy to have you here. What in your role as experts on this topic? We have Jake Levin from Virtual Ag Ventures and Dan Carr from Virtual Ag Ventures. And they are going to talk about meeting, especially. So I'm going to let you take the lead.
Thank you. So I think before we get into the slideshow, just give a little bit more context for who the three of us are. So I'm Jake Levin. I'm the local meat processing support program manager at Virtual Agricultural Ventures. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up here in Berkshire, and my background is as a butcher. I've been working as a butcher in the Berkshire Hudson Valley region for over a decade now.
I'm Katie Adkins, and I own and operate Plymouth Meats, which is in Terryville.
And my name is Dan Carr. I'm wearing two hats today. One is Virtual Ag Ventures. I'm the technical assistance and outreach manager for Virtual Ag Ventures, but I also was one of the, I initiated this program, so I'm excited to talk a little bit about how it got started. Well, my other hat is I'm a livestock farmer in Falls Village, Connecticut, and I raise sheep and beef cattle. So I'm going to start the presentation from up here. I don't have light guys. So I'll start off, and then I'll hand it off to Jake, and then we're gonna let Katie tell her story a little bit, and then we'll open it up to questions from there. So for folks that don't know about Virtual Agricultural Ventures, we're a local not-for-profit that is really our mission is support the development and viability of local farms, food businesses, basically aiming to build a thriving and equitable local food economy. And we do that through basically three approaches. First, my role is, and Jake's role when working with meat processors is largely related to technical assistance. And when I say technical assistance, people think like fixing people's computers. That's not it. Technical assistance is really flexible and varies a lot. It can be business planning, technical assistance, marketing. It could be grazing planning. We do a lot of things like that, or animal handling with our in-house technical assistance. But a lot of what we do is hire really high-level consultants to be able to help farms and food businesses. And that covers the majority of the cost. So really what we're doing for our technical assistance program is making really high-level consultants accessible to small farms. One other thing I have to make a plug for is the grant writing technical assistance we do on behalf of farms and food businesses, because Martha Page, who's in the audience, is one of the consultants we've hired to write grants on behalf of farmers and processors. So I think that's been really transformative. Something that pairs up nicely with our technical assistance is our loan program. So we have a very low-cost loan program. It's very flexible terms. Oftentimes, if somebody's going through business planning, that is oftentimes setting them up to take out a loan, helping them prepare to take on the loan. Which we'll talk more in regards to meat processing. And then we also have a small grant fund. We're a young organization. We've only been around since 2017, but we've had a big impact. We've worked with more than 165 different farms and food businesses, given out more than $1.6 million in loans, more than $1.2 million in grants. And this number in the bottom corner is actually really quite dated. at this point, I think we've enabled between federal and state and local grants. Our grant writing has enabled close to $2 million for local food businesses. So I think that's one of the areas we've made a massive impact. So why? Yeah, please.
Quick, I've never seen that some patient equity. Does that just mean like you're very.
Yeah. So, well, there's only been two cases where we've actually invested in a business and without the expectation basically of a return. So I think that's where that term comes from. And there's been a few. It's very rare that BAB actually invests in local businesses. It's more often that BAB makes introductions to enable that. And I feel like that's a big part of what both Jake and I do is network.
Yeah.
Where a lot of what we do is just introduce people to other people. Good question. Thanks, Will. I can see from some of the people in the audience, I'm a little bit preaching to the choir here, but I always want to hit on the fact that I'm a big believer. That livestock systems, when done responsibly, really have a huge role in rebuilding ecosystems. When I think about my farm, I don't think I'm just providing my community with beef or lamb. I really strongly believe that the practices that I incorporate on the land management end of things are the most important thing I do as a farmer in terms of those ecosystem services. The way we graze, the way we manage our animals using adaptive multi-paddock grazing, where we're having a heavy impact on a certain area of the land and then having a long rest period, that builds organic matter in the soil. And that makes for healthy soil. And that not only is sequestering carbon in the soil, which is helping to mitigate climate change, but what I really believe is an undervalued aspect of what we do as animal husbandry folks is we're building carbon in the soil, organic matter that absorbs water, and that the effect that the good animal husbandry can have on the local water cycle, I think, is very much undervalued. And this year we had an excessive amount of rain. When you have really healthy soil, that helps absorb that, and that mitigates down river flooding. In the dry years, like we had last year, or it depends on what year you're talking about. And that's holding water in the soil for longer, and that really that helps cool the local microclimate. So, talk to me aside later if you want to talk more about that. Let's talk about the meat processing aspect. So these surveys are actually going back to 2018, but you can see the local supply for local meat was far outstripping the local. The local demand for local meat is far outstripping the local supply. So for beef, half of the supply meets the demand back in 2018. Pork barely, the supply barely registers on the demand for local pork. When you survey local farmers about what's keeping them from growing their businesses, 87% of them are going to say, or said in this survey, that it's lack of access to processing or consistent processing that is restricting them from growing their businesses. So I keep giving the caveat that this is before the pandemic. I actually joined BAB in March of 2020. What else was happening then, right? So a couple of months into my job of working for BAB, I'm still, a farmer at that time, going to the farmer's market, and holy cow, my demand, every time I go to the farmer's market, I'm coming back with empty coolers. And every time, I was sold out of meat. a couple of months after that we saw all the grocery store shelves run empty, right? Our local farmers had a huge spike in demand. I called Katie, I called local processors, and like, please, can I get some extra dates? Because I have this incredible demand that I'm not meeting. And everybody's like, yeah, you should have called me, 8 months ago. We're totally booked up at this point. So it really highlighted this larger issue. And so I really started pushing on VAB at this time, that this needs to be a big area of focus for VAB. So we started by enlisting an organization from Pennsylvania called Kitchen Table Consultants to do a deep dive into the area through surveys and interviews with farmers and processors to try and see, first off, is building a new facility in Berkshire County have the possibility of being profitable. But we said from the beginning, we also need short-term solutions. What are the near-term solutions that can help relieve that bottleneck so that farmers right now can start to grow their businesses? And the overwhelming thing they came back to us with is you got to focus on the existing local processors, work with them to help them to grow their throughput, and that's going to grow the local capacity for local livestock. Jay's going to talk a lot more about that. But so with that's what launched the local meat processing support program. After we got that Kitchen Table Consultants report, we wrote a regional food systems partnership grant that helped to build this focused program and to hire an expert in local meat processing to be able to dive deep into this and improve the processing bottleneck for the local livestock farmers so that there's going to be a larger supply for the local community. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to the expert in meat processing.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Dan did a great job sort of laying out who VAB is and the impetus for creating this program, and the way in which the system is disadvantaged the livestock farmer. But the system is also really disadvantaged the small meat processors. So meat processors that all of our local livestock farmers depend on in order to turn those live animals into meat food. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with this step. Meat processing in this country is essentially an oligopoly. It's controlled by just 4 companies who are over 85% of meat processing systems in this country. So that's already putting the small meat processor at quite a disadvantage. On top of that, it's the small meat processors who are most affected by regulatory sanctions from our FSIS inspectors, that's the USDA inspectors, the frontline food safety inspectors. And when you talk to small processors, the number one thing they cite is what is stopping their businesses from growing and being able to improve is their lack of access to capital. These are high-risk businesses, often small family-owned businesses, and banks tend not want to make those risky loans. Not to mention interest rates can be really challenging for a very low-margin business such as meat processing. Just to paint a picture of who these businesses are, luckily we have Katie here. These are small family-owned businesses. They're often handed down from generation to generation. The business owners, there are many years where they often can afford to pay themselves, often rely on free labor from their family. Heard Katie talk about her mom coming in to help the books, to help the kids. And this is it's a high stress, physically demanding job. People like Katie and many of our other meat processors, they're working 60, 80 hours a week. It doesn't really give the time and space and energy to work on the business. They're so busy working in the business. So what's our solution? I really think of it in terms of 2 pillars. And Dan has really talked well about one of the pillars, which is the combination of no-cost technical assistance that we are providing to processors low interest flexible financing, via our loan program and grant writing support. And that's been really instrumental in the work. So that's the one, I think is one pillar. The other pillar, I think, of in terms of our livestock working group, and it's via the livestock working group that we sort of are focusing on value chain coordination and infrastructure development support. That supporting infrastructure that can help improve reprocessing systems, create more resiliency, and hopefully increase capacity. So who is the team that's working on this program together? You met me, you met Dan. We also have Ren Constantis, who works with Berkshire Grown, our partner through the Regional Food Systems Partnership Grant. Ren is our livestock working group coordinator. And then we have Shannon Smith, that's Director of Lending and Finance. Shannon likes to describe herself as a recovering Wall Street person. She's over 20 years in finance and lending. So as you can see, and as Dan laid out, we all have expertise in the areas that we are working on. I'm a meat processor. Dan is a livestock farmer. Shannon has lived finance her whole life. Ren is a livestock farmer and food systems coordinator. So to talk a little bit more about the first pillar, the reason KTC recommended, as Dan said, we really focus on working with existing processors. And what we decided to do is to offer 18 months of no cost technical assistance to existing processors like Katie. Katie was our first processor we worked with, really, or we like to joke that she was our guinea pig. Also, an incredible case study that Katie will illustrate. So that technical assistance that we do in partnership with kitchen table consultants and other technical assistance providers as needed, is they'll really focus on working with the processor, focusing on their financial system, their business management. The people like Katie, as Katie will attest to, they come from agricultural backgrounds, they love meat cutting. They're not necessarily business, like many of the farmers. And that's, with a low margin business, that's an important skill to be able to develop. So they work with the processor to clean up and manage financial systems and equip them with the tools for managing their business, managing their flows, and allowing them to make really smart, strategic decisions about how to grow and improve their business. After the sort of focus on financial management, it really depends, the direction of the TA depends on what the processor is saying they need. It may be HR and management coaching, it may be processing workflows, it may be continuing to look at financial planning or marketing. And as I said, we'll bring on TA providers. So we work closely with Full Day, we'll help with food safety plans, plant design. So then once that technical assistance engagement is wrapped up, we can then work with the processor and say, okay, so you now have all these tools at your equipped with. What do you want to do? What are the changes you want to make? And we will help facilitate those changes by offering low interest, flexible loans. Those might be used for improving or expanding the facility. It might be used to buy new equipment or for job training, labor expansion. Shannon and I will work directly and closely with the process to figure out what is their need and how can we offer a loan package that best services the processor. The other pillar, the livestock working group. So that's made up of 10 members across the value chain throughout the Berkshire region. A combination of farmers, processors, people in the middle of the value chain, distributors, truckers, wholesale providers, and we have food service providers on there, not just that, but from other organizations. I think that the goals for that group is really twofold. One is to help facilitate and foster stronger communication across the value chain, especially between the processor and the livestock farmer. The second is to identify the areas where we can help support the development of critical infrastructure to help improve meat processing systems. That might be cold storage, that may be transportation, that may be value-added production facilities or contract facilities. And it's really, working with that group is really incredible joy. So to sort of give you a sense of some of the projects we're currently working on, we're engaged with two different processors in terms of taking up TA engagement. So one is Reed Farm in southern Massachusetts. They're a poultry farm processor. And thanks to a couple grants they were awarded from the federal government and the work they're doing with us, they will soon be the only USDA inspected poultry processor in the state of Massachusetts. That's going to be a huge win. We're really proud of that. We love working with Peter and Pat. The other processor we're currently engaged with is Adams Farm, which is a third generation female-owned red meat processor in Apple, Mass. They're the largest red meat processor in Massachusetts and the largest red meat processor in New England, who are dedicated to serving independent small livestock farmers. Yes, they would enjoy the work with. And both those operations are critical for improved meat processing.
Can you repeat the names of the processors?
Reed Farm and Adams Farm. Reed Farm in Sutherland, Mass. and Adams Farm in Apple, Mass. We are currently working with Kitchen Table Consultants and Matt LaRue from Cornell Cooperative Extension and Cornell Dyson School of Economics and Management to develop a baseline cost reduction and pricing workshops and tools. So those are tools that are going to allow livestock farmers to more easily understand both the cost reduction and then translate the cost reduction into pricing that can create the appropriate revenue, the goal revenue for that livestock farmer. And that's supported by extension risk management and education grant that we received earlier this year. We are also working closely with the Foodworks Group, a female-owned consultancy group based throughout the country, to do a market analysis and feasibility study for a value-added production facility that would be USDA inspected. It would also be accompanied with cold storage that would be available for use by livestock farmers. For those of you who are familiar with the term value-added production, what we really mean is products like sausage, smoked products, pâtés, ready-to-go meals, bone broth, pet treats, and anything there. The impetus for that study came out of livestock. In conversations we were having with livestock farmers and processors about there being incredible opportunity to create value for the products that are the hardest to market and sell for livestock. Most of the livestock farmers in our region are doing direct to consumer sales, so they're going to farmers markets or they have farm stores. What ends up building up either in their cold storage that they have on farm or being thrown out at a processor, bones, fat, skin, meat products. Those in and of themselves may not be appealing to the marketplace, to consumers, but when those products are turned into bone broth, pet treats, cooking lards, soaps, balms, you name it, all of a sudden they have incredible value and actually can often fetch a higher margin than ground meat or sausage. So that study will be wrapping up in the next 18 months and is supported by a Massachusetts earmark we received last year, thanks to Senator Hines and Senator Martin's office. So that's what we have, some of what we have in progress. But here's some of the outcomes we've achieved. We provided Katie with 18 months of the technical assistance as well as a low-interest loan that she used to build a smokehouse for her facility. We shall talk probably more about that. Just to highlight how the number in the, I think, second slide or third slide is quite outdated. We've assisted 5 processors in accessing over $750,000 in federal and state grants in the last 2 years. That's over $750,000 going directly to meat processors in this region to allow them to make improvements on their facility. On top of that, we've established an $840,000 revolving loan fund that is just dedicated to making low-interest loans to meat processors throughout the southwestern New England and Eastern New York, really looking throughout for that. That's thanks to a USDA grant we received as well as generous contributions from local community members. Just recently, we launched the Meetup newsletter and listserv. The idea behind that is really an extension of livestock to create a more open platform for further collaboration, coordination, and cooperation among people within the value chain. It's also now a place for people to share success stories, opportunities, resources, and have questions, ask each other for advice, support. We're really happy with how that's going and look forward to continuing to expand that. On top of that, we produced a livestock farmers resource guide. That started out as a processor directory for the region, and we continue to add that. So it includes information like who's offering livestock hauling, who's doing transportation for finished product, Where are their cold storage facilities? We just added a tab for service providers, and we'll continue to expand and grow that. We're currently working on a tab that includes sort of animal husbandry and welfare services anywhere from like veterinary to like testing services. And we really that's like we really want that to be a user generated resource. So we're actively asking livestock farmers, other and processors to tell us what they want in that resource graph so that we can really develop that. And then lastly, but certainly not least, at the beginning of October, we launched the BAG agriculture food safety and HACCP hotline. HACCP is hazardous analysis, which is a critical point. It's documents that are created by the processor that are approved by the USDA that they need to follow in order to stay on the USDA record. So it's really critical food processing systems. This is a free hotline that is hosted by Nicole Day, a food safety and plant design expert. She holds office hours every Thursday from noon to 4. It's open to anybody, and you can schedule time to Nicole via our website or her website. We are really thrilled about how that is being utilized and reception. We feel like it's truly valuable. So we've had a lot of success in the last few years, and we're really proud of all the work that we've done. But we still face some big hurdles, and there's a lot more work for us to do. So some of the top hurdles that come to mind when I think about what we're working on and what we really struggle with in terms of figuring out like logistics and transportation. That includes how to create efficiencies for livestock farmers in terms of bringing the livestock to the processor, as well as creating efficiencies for livestock farmers for bringing the finished wrap product back to the farm. So as I said, most of the farmers in our region are directly to consumer. And so they take back that product and sell it on their farm stuff. How do we make it so that it's not 20 farmers going up to submit every week, but it's one truck coming back and bringing it to those farmers? Also working with distributors to increase how much local meat is represented in local distribution companies. And last but not least is also how do we create stronger systems for bringing full carcasses to wholesale customers in our organizations, particularly like Boston, New York. Labor is a huge issue. I really wish I understood how to fix labor. Obviously, housing is a big part of that, but I'm convinced there's more that can be done on that. Labor both for the livestock farmer, for the processor. And finally, another issue that we all struggle with, both at the processor and at the farm, is quality control. That's for the processor, that's quality in terms of the quality of cuts, the quality of packaging, the quality of value-added production. For the farmer, it's consistent quality of the carcass of the livestock itself. We have really great talented farmers and processors here, but there's always room for it. And we want to continue to figure out what are the tools we can offer to help to improve quality and create more consistent qualities. But there are also some issues that DAB is not well positioned to deal with or take on. Those are mostly policy solutions. So as Dan and I have alluded to, the Biden bill administration really had put a lot of energy and focus in terms of supporting local meat processing. And there was a bevy of incredible grants that were released last couple of years that we went hard for and had great success in getting. But unfortunately, a lot of those grants are gone now. A lot of those were based on ARPA funding, and with the dysfunction in Congress and the sort of discussion around the farm bill, we don't expect to see a lot more grant funding or directed for meat processors. That's a really important and critical tool, and we'd love to see more funding continue to come from the USDA and from the state to support meat processing and the meat processing value chain. Here in Massachusetts and in Connecticut, it's not really strong or clear state inspection and regulation for meat processing. New York has a pretty decent system, Vermont has a really great system for it. But that makes a huge difference for processing, especially and for livestock farmers, especially when you start thinking about like value-added production. We'd love to see, and we're asking our stakeholders to work on that, and other places would be poultry processing. And finally, we'd love to see more exploration of creative policy solutions. Right now, in the Farm Bill, Shelley Pingree and Sherrod Brown are co-sponsoring a bipartisan bill that's really interesting about supporting local meat processing. Senator John Fetterman has an interesting proposal that I think would have a positive impact on local meat processing. We'd love to see more creative thinking from our legislators in terms of how to alleviate the bottleneck and create more opportunity for processors of livestock workers. I think with that, we will turn it over to Katie, and then afterwards we'd love to sort of have a conversation with Kate. Thank you.
Wherever you want.
I can stand here, so I can watch about the light. I'm Katie Atkins. I own and operate the meats, which is in Terryville, Connecticut. We're what USDA would call a very small plant. We do beef and hogs and some lamb and goats. We do on average around like 15 beef a week and like 25 hogs that we're cutting and processing. I started, so I actually opened in 2017, in the fall of 2017. I opened just a pasta at that point because I was still finishing remodeling my building. I had been remodeling. I had bought a building and started remodeling. It took about 2 years to do that. But I started working with town regulations and permitting in 2011. So it's 2011 to 2015 when I found a location, and then 2017 before I opened. Didn't actually come under inspection until March of 2018. And then now it's everything in one building from live to cut. So there's been a lot of hurdles for sure. But it's a growing business, and I loved cutting meat and I raised livestock myself. So then I saw that need and just ran with it. It's really what it came down to. And luckily was able to find a loan to purchase the building and then just baby steps from there. And then a couple of years ago, Dan approached me about working with Dad. And that's been, it was a little scary at first, I'm not gonna lie, but it's been a really good experience. It's helped grow my business. If nothing else, like Jake was talking about with working with KTC, I did that 18-month technical assistance program and started to work with her, and she took all of my books and basically turned them upside down. But now I understand what I'm looking at a lot better. I can make a lot more sense of it in just like a few minutes every morning and evening. Just making sure everything makes sense instead of like sitting down for hours and hours and trying to sort through it all on my own. At least it all makes a lot more sense now. And it really makes running the business a lot easier, having it well organized and together. I've also gotten to take advantage of working with Nicole Day. She's helping me write the HACCP plan for my smokehouse right now. I have a low interest loan from that, that soon, fingers crossed, my smokehouse will be up and operating. But that's helped me with a lot of the remodel costs there and equipment cost of all that, just to add that in. And also, I've worked with a grant writer, thanks to that as well, to go up to that local MCAT grant to hopefully expand and get more equipment to make things more efficient in what we're doing. Improve those efficiencies to be able to make it better throughput for the business. So it's got all of that all together, but I feel like I'm at a much more stable point now than I was in 2018 for sure. It was working, don't get me wrong, but it was just, I didn't know any better, and it was just a couple of us then, and now it was myself, my mom, and one friend of mine when I started in 2017, and now I have about 8 employees. So it's really good. It's been a very interesting growth, but it's been good.
Any other questions? If you want to know more about what these people have just said, or if you want to start your own more business details. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to pick up on your new employees, and can you just describe how they're spread out through your business, what their functions are?
Yeah, so well, when I first started, we were just custom and we were doing just cut and wrap till I finished building until we're getting all that equipment in there. So really, it's just myself.
All the customs, by the way, is, just want to sure, and we explain terms, custom means it's not under USDA inspection, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So those are, people cutting meat for themselves, having an annual process for themselves.
So it's not for sale, right?
Every package is not for sale.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Which you can, there's those technicalities, you can sell someone a full animal and they can live. I mean, technically you can sell it to two people live and then they take the half of it themselves, but each package is still going to say not for sale, is all custom. So it was just myself and one other guy cutting, my mom wrapping. That's where I started. And then adding somebody working the kill floor. Now I have 3 people working the kill floor. We typically only slaughter 4 days a week. That way it gives us a little bit of a catch-up time because like one of those guys will come up with a cut on that 5th day. But I have a USDA inspector full time. She's there 7:30 to 4 Monday through Friday. To be able to operate, she has to be there, especially for the slaughter end of it. They watch them come off my trailer, they watch the animal walking around and make sure everybody's healthy. And then she watches that whole process and then inspects every part of it. Like I have to have what we call a gut cart so she can spread it all out and make sure like everything looks normal. Yeah.
I'm sorry. The USDA inspector, are they, someone that would come, an inspector that would come and work with you, are they really knowledgeable about small business as opposed to industrial? I mean, so it's like one size fits all, or how does that help?
In terms of like, are they like know anything about small business? No, because sometimes their expectations are very unrealistic.
Okay.
But at the same time, like the girl that I have now, she never worked in a big plant. But it's just how their training their book work training starts. But I've had her for now just over a year and she's come to realize like how the business works and the flow of everything, which helps. Like when I had one guy that used to work, he worked for 25 years in a big plant as an inspector. So he literally watched like one section of it all day long. And then he comes into my plant and
Do everything.
it was a mess for a while. Like, and finally some of his colleagues were like, this is not like what you're expecting of them, because you have one person doing what 100 people were doing in the plant that you just came from. So it's 2 very different perspectives for sure.
I was going to say that it's from inspector to inspector, there's a lot of difference, and it really depends on who you get. I forgot to mention in my bio that I ran the USDA poultry processing facility, but we're working with that.
In what state?
Connecticut, yeah. And we had 2 different inspectors, actually had 3 different inspectors we worked with. Katie's worked with 2 of them. Actually, no, 4 different inspectors, 3 of which Katie's, I've seen in Katie's plant too. And there's so much variability in terms of the standards and what they were looking at, that I kind of had to get to know those inspectors. And to your earlier question, one of them, it was really would offer really helpful advice, and I became friends with along the way. And when I saw him working at Katie's place, I'd always be like, hey. But so it's an interesting relationship between the processor and the inspector, and I think it behooves the processor as much as possible to try and strike a balance between making a bridge there, but also pushing back, because sometimes you do need to push back on the inspectors and say, hey, you're calling me out on this thing, but can you show me the actual regulation that you're calling me out on? Because I think you're overstepping.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that's Katie walked that tightrope pretty well. Yeah.
In the second, I just want to say one more thing on that. No, I'd love to very fast, but there's an interesting shift that's happening among FSIS inspectors, which is the old guard tended to be people who came out of ag and so they worked in the Danbury circuit. I used to work in the Albany circuit in the USDA inspected plants I worked in. And the older guys, and it was mostly men in that circuit, they came out of families that own meat processing facilities or were farmers themselves. The younger people, often they're former military, they've been hiring a lot out of Puerto Rico, and it's a lot of younger women who have masters in biology, but don't necessarily know anything about ag or processing. And so it's creating an interesting shift. One's not better than the other, but they come with interesting dynamic. But can't stress enough what they're saying about like each inspector is really different, and it can make a really big difference in terms of how your facility runs. The critical part of all of it. Martha, sorry.
I don't know, no problem. You're independent. Yep. What type of support do you get from the Department of Ag, or do you wish you got from the Department of Ag?
I really don't interact with them at all, necessarily not in terms of meat processing. I mean, I have a couple friends at Department of Ag, but that's more just me and my farming. But this is not my meat processing business, so I really don't.
I mean, because the shortage of processing capability across the entire region is a known problem for how long, like forever. And I think that obviously state departments of agriculture really ought to be a little bit more active in this space.
Yes.
I've gotten slightly involved in the last year with some of, I'll call it that, politics, only because what's a regular customer of mine is the legislator right now for Connecticut. So she's gotten me involved with a couple of these conference calls just so I could tell my story. And she always hints at what I need to be talking about, of course, to get the point across, because so many of these legislators have absolutely no idea any of it going on. And their first instinct is just go build a plant. Just go build one right now. That's the fix. Just go build one. But you need the money to do that. You need people to work it. And honestly, something bigger than the money is the people to work it.
Yeah.
It takes a special person to work in a meat processing plant in general. Never mind work the kill floor. It takes a special person. That is not for everybody to be doing a job like that day in and day out.
There's a reason I left at the chance of hanging up my knives to go work in the home office. I don't know how Katie does it. I just couldn't handle working on the cement floor with no light, those odors and smells, and my back hurt every day. It is tough work.
I spent a lot of money on good shoes.
Yeah, it's also really stressful interacting with FSIS. That for me, that was a really draining part of it. We had a really difficult effect there.
One thing I also just wanted to say, to your point, Martha, is that Connecticut had a sort of a livestock and processing specialist, and I heard that they've now left the Department of Agriculture, which is very concerning for me because I haven't heard that role being refilled at UConn Extension. So it's definitely a huge problem in Connecticut, and I would say also in Massachusetts that there's a big gap in that understanding. Maybe you mentioned that to Ashley.
I was just gonna say, that's write this all down.
We're now cooperative extension, what they do in New Jersey, it's huge. It's amazing the infrastructure they provide, and they've been an incredible partner for us in our program. But just generally, what they are doing for processors and what they're able to do for processors, that makes a critical difference. The lack of investment from Connecticut and Massachusetts in the extension programs is really noticeable. Well,
being a customer of Plymouth, one of the, and just with any local meat or food thing is, to my mind, one of the best things is just knowing the people that are doing the work. But yeah, I was thinking that it might be great for folks on Zoom, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of the key differences between your plant, Katie, and an industrial plant. A lot of people's conception of meat processing comes out of documentaries that are right for that flattering. place. Folks are smiling, they're happy to help. But I know there's a lot more going on behind this, that's a lot different than what's going on in the industrial settings.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that the flashback that I get is when I first started when people heard that there was a slaughterhouse wanting to come into town, granted, so by the town ordinances, I could go into an industrial, which is fine. I'm a little off the beaten path. Some people claim it to be more off the beaten path than others, but I'm still 5 minutes from Route 8, so it is what it is. I don't want to be somebody's neighbor, so they don't want me there. But when they heard slaughterhouse was coming into town, it turned into this big uproar with all the neighbors. And before we even started doing work on the building, I invited them in. And my dad came to stand next to me and be that strong supporter that a good dad is. And if you ask my dad, he would agree with me 100%. They literally came in there with like pitchforks and fire ready to fight things. They came in with like binders full of papers. I had this one lady look at me and go, "Oh, you are what a person that killed animals looks like." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I don't know how to take that right now. Yes, I am a person, thank you." But the big image that they had is there was gonna be trucks, like tractor trailer sized trucks in and out of there all day long. There was gonna be there's gonna be cows mooing, roosters crowing, it was gonna smell like poop all the time. There was gonna be neon signs. I don't know why we needed neon signs, but all the perceptions that these people gave me, this is what they expected. They thought there was going to be trucks idling 24/7. I'm like, no, all the animals come into the building. Like, I have no outside storage, like no animals outside. If you drive into my parking lot, it looks like an industrial building. It's a 7,000 square foot metal building. That's it. And I keep all the nasty stuff in a cooler so it doesn't smell. I mean, when you walk in the door, it smells like a meat processing facility, but the image that's portrayed attached to a slaughterhouse, everybody thinks like big, huge place, blood running across the parking lot, animals making noise. Like, it's not a pretty image. It's a struggle to fight that. But people come in, and being in an industrial park, I'm not allowed to have a retail store, so I don't have a meat case. But I sell stuff already individual packaged. I use that in my own farm store, plus I bring in some other product. Everything's sold just like I would at the farm market, all cryovac labeled, frozen. People come in and buy a pound of hamburger and a steak, and they leave and they're like, "Wow, this is so nice." And I bring my dog to work with me every day, and she sits there and greets them. She's the day in the lunchroom.
What Katie won't say is that she has one of the cleanest, brightest facilities I've ever seen. So she's at the top level of what model facility.
I mean, I did work in a meat processing facility in Litchfield for about 15 years before I started my own. That's where my passion for working with local farmers and seeing that need came from. And that was my one thing when I was designing the building. I'm like, we're gonna add windows, like natural light, people. It's a good fit. The white walls look nice and bright and clean, but natural light.
And I'm very sorry, I'm not familiar with your farm, but you still raise livestock.
Yeah.
How, I know they have to be, they're zoned differently, but how close is your farm to your process?
I live about 7 minutes from the place.
And I know you don't have free time on your hands, but do you give, I'm just thinking about PR and giving tours of farm and the abattoir, combined. And it's like you need that pull in the head, but it's just like, seems like there's an image. I mean, it's not that there's an image problem, it's just that people are ignorant. They do not understand. They've never been exposed to it, so.
Yeah, definitely a big part of it. I work with a couple of local schools, like a couple of them are out at National Convention right now, a couple of different bakers that came in just so they could watch us break down a carcass and do some carcass judging. I get a bunch of steers from the Big E 4-H sale, and then they come, I did 16 steers from there this year, and all those carcasses all get judged. So I had 2 different bakers come in when the judges were there so they could see all that. It was awesome. They were like, "This is so cool. We're ready for nationals now." Like, there you go. Yeah.
Do you think there's any legal way to have, I guess I'm not trying to think about the distance that any animals have to go from here to your facility or to any nearby facility, is there a way to have a mobile aspect, to the operation where you could do the killing and the gutting at the farm and then refrigerate to move to?
So it's something that's been talked about a lot. It was probably, it's gotta be at least like 12 years ago now. There was a group that in Litchfield County that was trying to get a mobile unit started, something that would be inspected. And just to build that trailer, they were looking at like $1 million just for that trailer. But then you also have to have multiple facilities, like USDA, like they really wanted multiple facilities to dock that trailer at, to be able to unload those carcasses, plus paying an inspector full-time to travel with that trailer. And then it got into like logistics of like, the trailer has to bring its own potable water and be able to take back the discharge water. So it's like so many aspects to that in a trailer wasn't realistic, especially the cost associated with that, to go to like a farm and kill like one animal and then close our shop and drive 15 miles and go kill 2 more. The logistics of it were crazy.
Well, it's beyond like just the government, like laundry of all of that, like, do you think it's, if you were able to change the regulations, so that without compromising the safety aspect, do you think it could be done in a safe way?
Not in an economically feasible way.
Not
Not in an economically feasible way. I think the regulation is a burden, but I think for the most part, the regulations are well intended and have positive effects, although they make it, more challenging. But there are less than 20 USDA inspected mobile processing units in this country. I think it's actually closer to 15. Several of those in the last year I've decided to adopt, like just to stop being mobile. It's just like so challenging to make, for all the reasons Katie laid out, make it economically feasible. Now, if we wanted to go to like a government subsidized program, basically a socialized program where like, the government just said, oh, well, we'll invest in this and like not worry about profitability, that's an interesting thought experiment. But Glenwood did actually win for it. It got it mobile process, and then they just couldn't figure out how to make it work. And then that's not the problem.
One more question for a while, but it's that the bottom part that never got used.
Before you ask that next question, but if you're talking about USDA, there is people that do it, custom, and Jake here comes to my farm and slaughters lambs and goats and I sell whole animals to people. And also for large animals, Greg Stratton at Stratton's Meats has a beautifully designed truck that he'll come out, he'll slaughter the animal right where it was born, or right where it's grazing. And, he has a hoist on his truck where he can gut it there. He can keep all the entrails right on the farm and compost them. And then he brings the quartered beef back to his custom plant and butchers and cryovats there. And I love that. I love it when I can sell live animals to people, have them sign a contract when it's alive. And I think that's a beautiful way to process an animal right there on the farm.
And it's a critical part of this whole value chain. And we are providing support with those kind of processes as well. Yeah.
Cool. I think the second question I had is with the value added processing in Massachusetts. Do you think that like that facility has to be a commercial kitchen to fill that role?
That is a really great question. And by commercial kitchen, do you mean like shared use where different people are coming in to use it, or do you mean in terms of the health inspection regulation?
Just more I know that it's hard to sell something for a farm in Massachusetts unless it's like so safe, like it could be a baked good, clean.
Well, baked good is something easy to do. It's what
I like that stuff. Then once you start processing even vegetables, it becomes something that has to go through an inspected commercial kitchen And that's difficult.
Getting the inspection for like baked goods and a lot of those, like,
You don't have, you can sell it.
but it's pretty easy to get that. That's why we're saying we really are encouraging the state of Massachusetts to create more clear regulation around meat production for that. Because there isn't really clear regulation around that, and it creates a lot of problems. So like I was just at Baldwin Farm yesterday. He has a commercial kitchen license because he has a food truck. That food truck's parked on his property. He's able to produce product there and sell from his farm store. But that's not an easy thing for everybody to get. And it so depends on town to town. So like, West Stockbridge may allow you to do that. And if you go to Great Barrington and the town health inspector will tell you no. Right now, there are some people in Massachusetts legislation working towards creating universal or statewide consistency around those health inspection programs. And I think that's a really important step towards this. But the next step is creating more clear state inspection for meat processing. New York has a great program, the 20C program, which would allow a farmer to produce bone broth, be inspected by ag and markets, and produce bone broth on farm and sell that on farm or at farmers markets. But Massachusetts just doesn't have any system equivalent to that. And in fact, the way Massachusetts has approached it is it's really complicated, where it's the Department of Public Health that oversees food inspection. But when it comes to meat, then you have to have MDR involved because they have to look at waste and composting. And then also, it's like 3 different agencies all have to come together, and it's a broken system in Massachusetts. Yeah.
Gotcha question for our keynote.
Yeah.
I'll get on the good side.
Okay.
You're right. I would say, well, she's somebody that's really forward-looking in
Yeah.
terms of livestock farming. She's pro livestock farming to much more so than I would say some other academics.
But it's also a question for Maura Healy, it's not a question for Ashley Randall. Ashley Randall doesn't have any say over Department of Public Health overseeing these systems. That's up to the governor's office and our state legislature. So it'd be great to engage Senator Markup in the committee.
You have a question?
Oh,
Do you think that I was just reading that like 4 companies control all most of the poultry production in the United States? Do you think that industrial meat processing is at the level of monopoly? And if so, is there anything that the government could do about that, or is it too just kind of fundamental to our food system, getting people fed that you can't really breathe with?
Yes. The Biden administration's been pretty aggressive. I'd like to see them be more aggressive, but they've been more aggressive than any administration has in decades in terms of really trying to break up those big 4 companies. There's actually a lawsuit right now from the Department of Justice trying to accuse, addressing that issue. It's also what these grant programs do. They're coming from it at both sides, supporting the Katie's and also trying to bust the oligopoly. But oligopolies are bigger than just U.S. government. I mean, JBS is the biggest one there, Brazilian. These are multinational companies. So I've been really impressed with the Biden Bills Act administration and the Justice Department in terms of their efforts of shaping this, but it's I don't want to get too much into politics, but like with Congress right now, the way it is and the nature of American politics, I don't see a ton of hope for that. I mean, I will say one of the nice things about some of the small meat processing legislation is it really is bipartisan. Like, it's not a red or blue issue.
And where is it coming out of?
What?
Where is it coming out of this legislation? Your name's
Well, I named the Democrats. So John Tester's actually been really great about this. To name a Republican, Shelley Pingree.
John Tester.
Oh,
I worked on his candidate. The Montana Senate.
who are the Republicans?
Well, from Kentucky, Massey is one that signed on with Sherry.
Shelley Pingree from Maine has really been great. Sherrod Brown was signed on that as well. That's a big one right now.
There's another senator from Nebraska, who I'm not getting from that, but, who's been on the right side of this. Yeah, I mean, it's very much actually a bipartisan issue.
Good, so we're running out of time. There's lots more to say, so feel free to talk to these folks, the rest of the conference. Thank you for your. So lunch now, to the dining hall, you can follow the crowd. After lunch, you can go see the pruning demonstration out behind the art center, or you come back here for the networking event from 1 to 2. Then we have our farmer panel at 2 o'clock here again. So thank you again.
Good job.